Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this November 7 edition of Nightcast. And tonight in the news, we're going to Helen Willits is standing by with a report on a super typhoon headed for the Philippines.
Hello there. This massive cloud is a powerful typhoon. It's likely to be the most powerful so far this season to hit the Philippines. It's called a violent or a super typhoon, and we measure the strength of typhoons on the power of the winds. And they're at the top end of the scale at the moment. They're packing a punch, almost 200-mile-an-hour gusts of wind around this system, and its effects will be far-reaching as it ploughs its way through the central belt of the Philippines, affecting many areas with flooding rains, 250 to 400 millimetres, which will bring not just flash flooding but mudslides as well. Some very significant waves, very dangerous seas at the moment, and it is likely to cause some very major impacts. And then it'll plough out into the South China Sea and beyond, eventually affecting Indochina. But at the moment, its strength is peaking. It's not going to ease in its strength, though, before it hits the Philippines in the next 12 or so hours, and it will give some major impacts. Stay tuned for updates.
We certainly will, Helen. And I just sent an email off to John Zapshaw, a friend of mine from Pasadena, who is currently in the Philippines. And I asked John to let me know what he sees in relation to this. Again, she told you the winds are expected to reach 278 kilometers per hour or 173 miles per hour. And that's what it's moving at now. The Category 5 storm is moving towards the Southeast Asia nation of the Philippines with winds of up to 173 miles per hour, 278 kilometers per hour. Elsewhere in the world, friends, we've got a story out of Afghanistan where they have a new, Pakistan has a new leader. But leading politician Imran Khan has warned that NATO supply routes running through Pakistan to Afghanistan will be blocked unless the U.S. stops its drone attacks.
Warning announcements boom across the streets as Philippine authorities gear up to face yet another typhoon. Schools have been closed,
Okay, friends, I forgot we were able to secure another video related to the typhoon coming to the Philippines. So let's hold off on that story out of Pakistan. Let's watch this one, and then we'll do the Pakistan story. This additional story on the typhoon that's due to arrive in the Philippines, super category typhoon, due to reach the Philippines tomorrow.
Warning announcements boom across the streets as Philippine authorities gear up to face yet another typhoon. Schools have been closed, transport services halted, and homes evacuated to avoid potential loss of life. In the densely populated district of Barangay Macalban in the south, many families have taken shelter in a local sports hall.
We are prepared, together with the residents here, for the coming typhoon.
Satellite images show Typhoon Haiyan picking up strength as it approaches the island. In its path are areas struggling to cover from last month's 7.3 magnitude earthquake, including the worst-hit island of Bohol. The military say troops are already distributing food aid and their rescue helicopters are on standby. But authorities have warned people to brace for the worst. Rupa Suchak, BBC News.
Okay, friends, and all right, we'll keep our eye on that one. That one relates to the fourth seal of Revelation 6, which Revelation depicts as a pale horse whose rider is named Death, alongside whom rides Hades, hell, the grave. And the activities of this horse were described in plain language by Jesus Christ as loimos, disease epidemics, the plagues of Egypt, seismos, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground, seismic activity of all kinds, and terake, meaning troubled waters, both literally and figuratively. And we'll certainly have more on that story out of the Philippines with the super category typhoon headed that way by Sunday night, which will be our next scheduled nightcast for news. Now, on this next story, out of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Islamabad, Mr. Khan was speaking in this video. He's speaking during an interview with the BBC following the recent killing of the Pakistan Taliban leader. And he was killed via a U.S. drone strike. Richard Galpin has this full report from Islamabad.
In a way, the Pakistani Taliban wanted to send out a message to the world as well that they, if Malala is considered a hero in their world, Mullah Fazlullah for them is their hero. So that is why he's been given this post and elevated to head the organization. And this is also unusual from the context that this would be the first time that a non-Mahsood tribesman from Waziristan is leading the Pakistani Taliban now. They are not a democratic party or anything like that. They consider democracy to be un-Islamic. So how they work is that their shura, all the shura members sit together and they each one by one give out their position, explain who they should think should lead the organization, and then the head of the shura makes the final decision, which is binding on all the shura members. As far as keeping the whole organization united, that of course would be a big challenge for this non-Mahsood tribesmen from Swat Valley.
And more related to that, the new leader, the new Taliban leader in Pakistan has been named. He is Mullah Fazlullah. He was named after the death of the previous leader in a drone attack. He's known as a hardline commander whose men shot the schoolgirl activist Malala. Her first name was Malala. The BBC's Harun Rashid said that his appointment suggested that the Pakistani Taliban wanted to send out a message to the world.
This is the man apparently now in control of the Pakistan Taliban. Mullah Fazlullah is regarded as being even more brutal than his predecessor. One of his more recent targets was this Army General Sanaullah Niazi, who was visiting troops along the Pakistan-Afghan border in September. He and 2 other soldiers were killed by the roadside bomb. Fazlullah accuses the Pakistan Army, intelligence agencies and politicians of taking orders from what he calls infidels, in other words, the West. Back in 2007, his fighters took control of the Swat Valley in northwest Pakistan and imposed an extremely harsh regime. Punishments from floggings to beheadings carried out in public. He and his fighters were eventually pushed out by the army. But even then, the attacks in Swat continued. The teenager Malala Yousafzai amongst the victims, shot in the head for promoting education for girls. She survived after treatment in Britain.
So today's announcement that Mullah Fazlullah is to become the new leader of the Pakistan Taliban will be greeted with dismay by the vast majority of people here. Not least as the militants have also announced today that they now reject the government's tentative proposals for peace talks. Richard Galpin, BBC News, Islamabad.
And friends, I have another video with Mr. Galpin, Richard Galpin, that will reveal a little more on this. The BBC has learned that the new leader of the Pakistan Taliban is a notoriously brutal commander whose fighters, as you heard in the last video, they tried to kill the schoolgirl Malala Yousafzai. Just a week ago, there were cautious indicators that the Taliban and the Pakistan government were prepared to hold peace talks. But since then, a U.S. drone strike has killed the Taliban leader, and the new man says he doesn't care to talk. Here again is Richard Galpin reporting from Islamabad.
Tension outside the ERT headquarters as occupying staff try to push through police lines. They're moved back, refused entry by officers who have now reclaimed the building. The operation began before dawn, riot police evicting ERT workers almost 5 months after it was shut down. Reports say some tear gas was used, but inside the building it was relatively peaceful.
Okay, friends, apparently we lost the video with the additional report from Richard Galpin. The video that's playing now relates to what's going on over in Greece. I'll back it up. We'll play that much of it again. The Greek riot police have cleared the headquarters of the former state broadcaster ERT using tear gas to gain entry and arresting several people. ERT is the national television broadcasting facility in Greece, but the Greece people have shut it down. I have a couple of videos on that. That should tell you what's going on. We'll start this from the beginning again.
Tension outside the ERT headquarters as occupying staff try to push through police lines. They're moved back, refused entry by officers who have now reclaimed the building. The operation began before dawn, riot police evicting ERT workers almost 5 months after it was shut down. Reports say some tear gas was used, but inside the building it was relatively peaceful. 20 or so staff were led out, a few who resisted briefly detained. Protesters have been gathering ever since, furious at what's happened.
From what I saw from the cameras, they broke the lock of the main entrance at 4:20 a.m. They started jumping in from the metal gates from the sides. They also broke the door of the side entrance. They started running inside.
They came in darkness so no one would be around and evicted colleagues. They have violated my life, democracy. They have destroyed everything. I will stay here. I refuse to leave.
Greece's national broadcaster was suddenly taken off air back in June. The government called it wasteful and corrupt. All 2,600 staff were sacked in a money-saving effort as the screens went to black. An interim replacement has been set up before a new, leaner, cheaper broadcaster is established next year. But it's been a chaotic transition as ERT has continued online, refusing to be silenced.
And so the standoff, peaceful for now, goes on. The government says it had to retake this building so the new broadcaster can move inside, but that won't placate people here. And so the question now is this: do Greeks still have the stomach for yet another fight? Mark Lowen, BBC News, Athens.
And another report from Mark Lowen in Athens in this video.
I've just spoken to a couple of the journalists of ERT, and here's what they told me. They said that at about 4:30 this morning, there were riot police who arrived at the building. They used tear gas outside the headquarters in order to move inside. They then evicted about 25 people who remained inside the building. They arrested, we think, 2 journalists who, reports coming in that they have been actually released now. There is one journalist still inside who I've just spoken to, and he said that he will remain inside. He is likely to be arrested, but he's been there pretty much every day since this happened back in June. He refuses to leave. And there is now a pretty large gathering outside the building by staff who are protesting about this, and there are about 6 police vans that are outside. ERT staff have called for a larger protest in solidarity with the station later in the day, so this could, of course, get rather messy.
Friends, the second seal of Revelation, as described in Revelation 6, it's depicted as a red horse. You can see here on our chart, excuse me, the second column over is colored in red. That's to indicate the red horse. Excuse me, the second seal, again, Revelation 6, depicts as a red horse, which Jesus Christ described in plain language as war and rumors of war, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, world war. And as you know, we're now in between round 2 and round 3 of world war. But in the meantime, warring activities, warlike activities go on around the world. And this next story reflects one of the things that God is allowing man to have 6,000 years to govern himself. He's allowing man to write the lesson that man without God, man cannot govern himself. And this next story is kind of sad. You know, man does the best he can to try to police himself, to have a military to protect himself. But a recording has been released of the moment a British Royal Marine allegedly shot dead a wounded prisoner in Afghanistan. The prosecution at the court martial in Wiltshire says the shooting was in effect an execution. 3 Marines deny murdering the man while on duty in Helmand province in 2011. Caroline Wyatt reports.
The following report contains some disturbing images.
For the first time, we can show you stills taken from the video footage at the heart of the prosecution's case, shown to the jury many times now. They're from Marine B's helmet-mounted personal camera, images that sparked the trial after being found on a computer by civilian police. This was a highly unusual case, the first time that British forces have been put on trial for murder during the 12-year campaign in Afghanistan. The 3 Royal Marines were granted anonymity during this trial. They're known as Marine A, a sergeant, B, a lance corporal, and C, a Marine. On that day in September 2011, they'd been sent out to a field near their base after an Apache attack helicopter had been called in to fire at an insurgent. The audio of what happened that day in Helmand was also released by the court today. On it, all 3 Royal Marines could be heard discussing what to do with the badly wounded enemy fighter that they found. At this stage, he counts as a prisoner of war.
Anybody want to do first aid on this idiot? Nope.
Nope.
Put one in your head if you want. Take the pick. Not on his head, because that'll be obvious. Moving around here. Moving around.
But the personal camera is switched back on again, and then, I should warn you, a shot can be heard, fired by Marine A, who then says this.
Hey, I'll shuffle off his court to call you. Nothing you would do to us.
I know.
Exactly. Alright. Obviously this doesn't go anywhere, fellas.
Yeah, roger, mate.
I've just broken Geneva Convention.
Yeah, roger.
In court, the jury or board had also heard a 1-page diary entry read out by the prosecution. In it, Marine C wrote, "I was ready and willing to pop him." Marine A squared it and sent it up that he'd snuffed it while we were treating him. "I felt mugged off, but job done." The defence said the diary was not the literal truth, but a journal written to help the Marine to cope with the emotions of the tour. The defence for Marine A was that he thought the insurgent was already dead when he fired his pistol. Marine C's defence was that he didn't realise Marine A meant to fire his weapon, and their discussions were simply dark soldier humour. The Royal Marines faced tough and repeated tours of Helmand. And this trial has been a difficult one for a unit that lost 7 of its own men on that deployment. The jury in this case is what's known as a board made up of 7 Royal Marines and Royal Navy personnel. They were told by the judge in his summing up to use their own experience of life and of the services to judge each defendant's case individually. They deliberated for several hours today, and they'll return tomorrow to continue those deliberations towards a verdict. Caroline Wyatt, BBC News at Bulford Military Court.
Friends, in this next story, my hat's off to Rupert Wingfield Hayes, who was willing to go inside of a nuclear reactor in Japan to bring us this story.
Just before boarding the Russian rocket, the 3 astronauts held aloft a replica of the Olympic torch. The real one.
Well, apparently we've had a little problem getting with the order of our videos tonight. Let me see if we got that report. Well, actually, I think we lost the video on a couple of videos tonight, but we can, with the Olympics coming up, something that men celebrate, and I'm not only to keep us informed of things that are going on, but also, friends, because just before World War II, even Hitler had the Germans participating in the Olympics. And I don't know, for that reason, it just seems like it fits things that are going on. I'll try to get that story out of Japan for you by tomorrow night to let you know what's going on with that Japanese wrecked nuclear reactor. In this next video, though, a Soyuz rocket carrying the Saki 2014 Olympic torch has arrived at the International Space Station as part of the Russian lead-up to the Games. On Saturday, 2 Russian cosmonauts already on the space station will take the torch outside on a historic spacewalk. The Olympic torch has been carried into space twice before, back in 1996 and in 2000. But it has never left a spaceship. Daniel Sanford reports from the Space Center.
Just before boarding the Russian rocket, the 3 astronauts held aloft a replica of the Olympic torch. The real one was already stowed on board. Then they were ready, and the rocket, the astronauts and the torch blasted off into space.
And we had liftoff on a truly Olympic leap.
And there it goes, roaring off on its way to the International Space Station with the Olympic torch on board. It's so loud you can feel it in your stomach. And it's a dramatic reminder of Russia's leading role in manned space flight.
Beautiful launch, already 45 seconds since liftoff. Inside...
It was a 6-hour flight. Then the hatch was open and the torch was on board. On Saturday it'll become the first Olympic torch to go out into space itself, when it leaves the station on a spacewalk, carefully tethered to stop it floating away. It hasn't been the only Olympic adventure during the Russian torch relay. One torch even crashed its way to the North Pole on an icebreaker.
This is why it's called like a Kalashnikov machine gun.
When I met the president of the Sochi organizing committee at his Moscow office, I asked him why all the adventures.
Russia is a very special country, and there are few countries in the world, few nations who are capable to send icebreaker to the North Pole.
The torch relay has even been used to promote President Putin himself. When it arrived from Greece, he was centre stage and personally lit the flame. In Sochi itself, although the building work is continuing, the main venues are ready, apart from the huge 40,000-seater stadium that will only be used for the lavish opening ceremony. Daniel Sanford, BBC News.
Well, friends, the Bible tells us to take stock of the state of our affairs, take stock of our, be aware of our state of our stock, the field in your stock. And we have a good neighbor in Canada, but Canada's having some problems now in Toronto. Toronto's embattled mayor, Rob Ford, faces mounting calls for his resignation amid an ongoing drug abuse scandal. City Council colleagues say they've lost confidence in Mr. Ford a day after he apologized for having used crack cocaine. The voters, meanwhile, appear divided on their opinions of Mr. Ford, Mayor Ford. Toronto Mayor Ford. This video was produced for the BBC by Anna Bressanen.
I think our mayor needs to step down. I think he's lost his moral compass. I don't think he has the credibility to lead this city. And I'm not just a taxpayer. I'm a resident of this city. And I'm really proud of this city. And he's not making me very proud today.
As an example to our children, it sickens and saddens me. I have a 4-year-old at home asking me what crack is.
So I'm not so upset that he's hooked red. It's the fact that he lied about it and these tied-ins to the video and all these other bullying issues and the fact that he doesn't support his minorities.
Order rehab! Don't come back! Order rehab! Don't come back! Ford, smoke crack! Order rehab! Don't come back! Ford, smoke crack!
So I've been reporting on this mayor for about a year and a half. It started with an investigation into his frequent domestic incidents at his home and 911 calls. Earlier this year, we ran a story about the mayor's drinking habits, which at the time was explosive, although it seems small potatoes now. He'd been asked to leave a military ball after showing up impaired, and members of his own staff were telling us that they wanted to get him into rehab. And then a couple days later, I got this phone call from an individual who said that they had a video of the mayor smoking crack cocaine. In terms of additional revelations, it's hard to know. We do know that there are a couple hundred pages of search warrant documents related to a police investigation of the mayor that have not yet been released, that we're hoping will be released later this month. And what we're really interested in is what council will do. So they can't remove him, but they can do all sorts of tricky motions, like stripping the mayor's office of its budget. I think it would be extremely unlikely for the mayor to resign. He does have a very loyal group of supporters. They call themselves Ford Nation. It's sort of a Tea Party North, I guess we call it.
The people in urban Toronto especially do not like Mayor Ford. A lot of the suburbanites love him. He's keeping taxes under control. He's made sure that garbage services are running mostly smoothly. He's managed to downsize some of the city budget. So he has done a few good things for the city, does the best job that he can.
Friends, here in the United States, well, around the world, many people utilize Google, and it's become almost one of those words like Xerox. But there's a mystery, and the mystery of why Google has moored 2 barges off the U.S. coast appears to have been solved. The search giant has issued a statement saying it intends to use the structures as learning spaces for people to find out about new tech. The BBC's North American technology correspondent, Richard Taylor, has this report.
I am an explorator of the margins. It's just...
Okay, we'll try to resolve things so that I get our videos in good shape by tomorrow night. We're out of time tonight, friends. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Our next scheduled report is Sunday night. We take a break between Thursday and Sunday. And God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll be back with more news related to the Bible and prophecy. Until next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying, Good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.